The middle fork of the Stanislaus River in Calaveras County, with its shallow but swiftly flowing water with a rocky substrate, is the perfect home for the American dipper. Moreover, since the dipper feeds primarily on aquatic insects and insect larvae that require clean, unpolluted water for survival, the presence of dippers in this river attests to its water purity. This species' early name was the water ouzel or thrush, but was renamed rather dully to American dipper because of its habit of bobbing up and down or dipping. This bobbing habit appears rather strange, but it probably has several purposes, mostly connected with communication, because the intensity of sound produced by running water makes visual communication more effective than auditory means. The bobbing intensity is situation dependent, being more intense during courtship, territorial defense, foraging, and alarm over the presence of potential predators, mainly humans. As we will see, a begging youngster dips intensely in order to encourage its parent to bring food. It is possible that bobbing allows the bird to more precisely locate prey in a form of visual triangulation, rather like a great horned owl moving its head around while attempting to locate its prey. Because of its moderately small size, typically 7.5 inches long with a wingspan of 11 inches, the dipper feeds primarily on aquatic insects and their larvae, but also on small fish, fish eggs, and flying insects. Foraging normally involves diving underwater where it either flies with partially closed wings in a fast wing beat or uses its toes to hold onto the rocky stream substrate, thereby counteracting the current while it probes around and underneath rocks for its prey, often moving stones to locate hidden prey. However, it will also pick up food morsels from vegetation or occasionally catch flies in midair. This juvenile dipper is able to fly around somewhat and is able to look tentatively for food in shallower, slower water and pecks at vegetation in typical exploratory style. So my guess is that it's about 4 days out of the nest. A typical brood comprises 4 eggs, and when born after about 15 days of incubation, the fledglings are helpless and almost naked with just a little downy covering. They spend around 25 days in and close to the nest before finally abandoning it, and so given that this bird was observed on April 25th, the eggs were laid around mid-March. This gives the parents time to raise a second brood if they so choose, and this happens quite often, probably determined by the quality and quantity of available food in the river. Interestingly, the parents remove the nest lining almost immediately that their brood exits the nest, perhaps as a mechanism to prevent the youngsters from returning instead of weaning themselves, since any return to the nest would make them dependent on the parents who wouldn't respond. That would mean certain death for those young. As we see, this youngster bobs up and down frantically to signal a desire for food to its parents, and when one appears it goes quite frantic. It also calls equally frantically, but the river sounds drowns its call. The parents apparently provide only small morsels which the juvenile finds totally inadequate, but that is probably meant as encouragement to the youngster to forage for itself, the normal weaning process that ends after around 7 to 10 days departure from the nest. So this one is near the end of family support. Then it will have to fly up or down the river to establish its own territory and find a mate. The American dipper, the only one of 5 dippers worldwide that resides in North America, is the only aquatic passerine or songbird in this continent. In fact, it is so aquatic that it rarely crosses land throughout its life, preferring to fly up and downstream and nesting in rocks adjacent to the water's edge. Living in mountain streams year-round requires excellent insulation against the cold water, and so the dipper has more contour feathers than similarly sized songbirds, while downy feathers replace naked skin between feather tracts. Interesting too is that although its length and wingspan are much the same as the black phoebe, its weight is over twice that of the phoebe, so that it has a greatly increased ratio of body heat to surface area that reflects its cold living environment. In other adaptations to the cold environment, the unusually high oxygen capacity of its lungs enabled the dipper to stay underwater for up to 30 seconds while foraging. Furthermore, the iris sphincter muscles in the eyes allow more flexible curvature than most birds because the eyes must adapt differently for over and underwater use. Given that rushing water produces low to mid-frequency sounds, it is no surprise that a dipper has a high-frequency piercing song that is audible above the water sound for relatively long distances, such that the pair can maintain effective communication over much of their strongly defended territory. Both sexes sing relatively long and complex patterns, although the male alone sings loudly during courtship and pairing. Curiously, the eyelids are covered with white feathers which flash when the dipper blinks, and this constitutes another communication mechanism. Because of physical similarities, notably that upturned tail, the dipper has traditionally been linked to the wrens, but now data from egg white proteins, DNA to DNA hybridization, and mitochondrial DNA suggests that it is actually closer to the thrushes, which would make the old name water ouzel particularly appropriate. However, another later study that incorporated mitochondrial DNA and nuclear genes reported that the sister family may be the starlings. Well, perhaps we should just await the next genetic study and then the one after that. Or perhaps it doesn't really matter except the science. In August, this species molts all of its flight feathers at one time and becomes very withdrawn and secretive for up to the 2 weeks that the molt lasts. The status of the American dipper in terms of population numbers and trends is very unclear because there is no effective monitoring system. Since water pollution caused primarily by industrial or agricultural runoff is the biggest source of danger to dippers because of the deleterious effect on their prey, rivers such as the Middle Fork of the Stanislaus appear to offer a secure future in this location.